I found out what my family really thought of me from a hospital bed. 6 weeks earlier, I had given birth to a daughter. Then a truck ran a red light, and I woke up with 3 broken ribs, a punctured lung, and a cast on my right arm. My husband, Leo, was in Seattle 6 hours from getting home. Someone had to care for our newborn that night, and my mother lived 20 minutes from the hospital. She said no. She told Leo one sentence, and that sentence is the reason you are here. Your sister never has these emergencies. Leo repeated the words to me over the phone. His voice cracked. My mother was simply too busy. My sister, Kelsey, needed the car for a spa weekend, and the cat had anxiety. The line went dead. I gripped the plastic rails of the bed until my knuckles turned white. I swallowed hard and stared at the ceiling. The heavy, exhausting fog of being this family's endless fixer vanished. My chest burned with every breath, but my mind turned to pure ice. I am 33 years old, and for a decade, I believed I was the load-bearing wall of a struggling household. I work as a high school counselor. I spend my days de-escalating teenage meltdowns and managing aggressive parents. I thought I knew how to handle bullies. I just never realized the biggest one shared my last name. The next morning, my mother, Brenda, walked into my hospital room. She wore a perfectly pressed beige cardigan and carried a designer handbag. She did not ask about my punctured lung. She did not ask if I was in pain. A nurse stepped in to check my vitals, and Brenda immediately produced a fragile, tearful smile. She patted my foot, performing the role of the devastated matriarch flawlessly. The nurse offered me extra painkillers and spoke to me like a frightened child. I took a slow, shallow breath. I lowered my voice to the exact, steady pitch I used to calm a furious high school senior. I told the nurse I was managing, outlining my pain scale with absolute precision. The nurse blinked, nodded respectfully, and stepped out. The second the door clicked shut, Brenda's fake smile evaporated. She checked her watch. She said she had errands to run, complaining about traffic. I closed my eyes, letting my breathing slow, pretending the medication had pulled me under. Through the slit of my eyelids, I watched her. She did not leave right away. She walked over to the small closet where the nurses had placed my belongings. She opened my purse. Her manicured fingers dug through the leather compartments. Pulling out my emergency credit card, she slipped it into her pocket, patted her hair in the mirror, and walked out. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my hands remained perfectly still. They broke me down emotionally for years, but today, they handed me the hammer. 2 hours later, my phone vibrated on the tray table. It was Leo. He had just landed and received a massive fraud alert on our joint emergency account. $4,500 charged to a luxury event catering company. He knew I was lying in a hospital bed. Bypassing the slow hospital security protocols, Leo simply called the vendor directly. He posed as a husband, confirming a last-minute detail for the order. The vendor cheerfully confirmed the truth. Brendan had run the card in person to pay for the catering at Kelsey's 29th birthday bash. I opened my banking app, locked the card instantly, and forwarded the vendor confirmation emails to a secure folder. The betrayal was no longer just an emotional wound. It was documented theft. With the stolen card locked, I pulled my laptop from Leo's overnight bag. The physical pain in my chest was blinding, but my focus narrowed to a laser point. For years, I had funneled money into a legacy joint account. It was established when I was a teenager, and Brenda convinced me to keep it active to help pay my late grandfather's lingering medical debts and the taxes on the family home. I believed my sacrifices were keeping a roof over their heads. I navigated to the bank's login portal. My usual password failed. Brenda had changed it to lock me out. But she was a creature of toxic habit. She considered herself the center of the universe. I clicked the password recovery link. The security questions appeared on the screen. Mother's maiden name, name of your first pet. I typed the answers. 3 keystrokes later, the digital vault opened. One glance at the screen completely dismantled my reality. There were no medical payments. There were no property tax disbursements. Instead, the transaction history revealed a perfectly organized river of theft. Brenda had set up structured transfers. Exactly $9,000 moved every few weeks. She kept the amount just under the $10,000 federal reporting limit to dodge anti-money laundering flags from the IRS. I followed the money. The transfers funneled directly into a limited liability company registered to my sister, Kelsey. My money funded her entire luxury lifestyle influencer aesthetic. The designer clothes, the leased cars, the tropical vacations. Brenda had been bleeding my future to buy Kelsey's affection. I highlighted the total stolen over the last 9 years. $800,000. I stared at that massive, grotesque number. I pressed my palm against my cast. My family did not just abandon my newborn for a cat. They had financed their delusion with my life's labor. I picked up my phone and dialed Uncle Arthur. Arthur is my late grandfather's fiercely loyal brother, a retired mechanic who never bought into Brenda's dramatic performances. He answered on the second ring. I told him everything: the hospital, the stolen card, the $800,000. Arthur's voice was like gravel scraping over concrete. He told me a secret he had guarded for a decade. Brenda did not own the family home. My grandfather knew she was reckless with money. He had placed the deed into a trust, naming Arthur as the sole executor. Brenda merely held a conditional life estate. She had the right to live there, but only under the strict legal condition that she committed no financial crimes against the estate or the family. By stealing from me, she had triggered her own ruin. Arthur did not hesitate. He told me he was drafting a formal 30-day notice to quit. He was revoking her residency. We did not involve lawyers or file endless paperwork yet. We made a precise, surgical plan. Brenda and Kelsey were hosting the massive birthday bash the following evening. We agreed to meet there. I printed the vendor receipts. I printed the spreadsheet showing the 9-year history of the fraudulent transfers. I folded the papers neatly and slid them into a manila envelope. The trap was set. Leo drove us to the rented event space the next evening. The room glowed with string lights, packed with Kelsey's influencer friends holding champagne flutes. The catering I had unknowingly paid for was arranged on silver platters. We walked in through the heavy double doors. I still wore the hospital band around my wrist. My arm was in a sling. Brenda stood near the front, tapping a spoon against a glass. She launched into a weeping, self-congratulatory toast. She praised Kelsey's success, wiping away a fake tear as she bragged to the crowd about how the two of them managed this beautiful life entirely on their own. I stepped forward. I walked directly to the front tables. I slid my hand into the manila envelope. I pulled out crisp, color-printed copies of the caterer's email confirming the stolen credit card swipe. I stapled them to the top of the spreadsheet, highlighting the $800,000 stolen to fund the influencer business. I handed them out like party favors. The room went dead silent. Brenda's jaw dropped. The color completely drained from Kelsey's sunburned face. Sweat beaded on Brenda's forehead. She stammered, her eyes darting around the room, desperately looking for an exit. She pointed a shaking finger at me, screaming that my accident medications were making me hallucinate. Kelsey's boyfriend lunged forward, puffing his chest, trying to intimidate me into leaving. Leo stepped right into his path. Leo planted his feet, shoulder to shoulder with Arthur. Leo's voice was terrifyingly calm. He warned the boy to take one more step, promising the police would be called for physical assault, not just felony fraud. The boy immediately backed down, raising his hands and shrinking into the crowd. I looked Brenda dead in the eyes. I announced clearly that the family ATM was permanently closed, and Kelsey had exactly 24 hours to pay for her own cake. Arthur stepped past me. He dropped the formal 30-day eviction notice directly onto Brenda's dessert plate. Leo wrapped his arm around my good shoulder, and we walked out the doors. The fallout was swift, but Brenda could not accept defeat. Because I had locked the stolen credit card, the party caterers threatened Brenda with criminal theft of services. Cornered, panicking, and completely drunk on her own entitlement, Brenda made a fatal mistake. She left a scathing, unhinged voicemail on my phone. She threatened to call Child Protective Services and claim I was a drug-addicted, unfit mother due to my pain medications if I did not unlock Kelsey's accounts immediately. 2 hours later, a social worker knocked on my door. Brenda had actually made the anonymous call, weaponizing the state against my newborn. But Brenda forgot who I was. As a high school counselor, I am a mandated reporter. I work alongside the Department of Children and Family Services every single week. I welcomed the agent inside. I showed her the nursery. Then I handed the agent my phone and played Brenda's voicemail. The extortion was undeniable. I formally reported the fraud to my bank, which immediately triggered an anti-money laundering freeze on Kelsey's merchant accounts. Her cash flow dropped to zero in an instant. I handed the voicemail evidence over to the police liaison. Brenda was arrested for felony blackmail. Her attempt to weaponize the system legally guaranteed her own destruction. Kelsey was broke, Brenda faced prison and eviction, and I locked the door to my house, finally safe. The judge eventually sentenced Brenda to 6 years in state prison with eligibility for parole after 4 years. The court also ordered restitution of $142,000, liquidating Kelsey's remaining assets to pay it. The community reaction was swift. The neighbors who used to attend Brenda's extravagant holiday parties completely shunned her. Kelsey had to take a minimum wage retail job, her friends abandoning her the second the luxury dinners stopped. The empire built on my back crumbled into dust. Months later, a letter arrived in my mailbox. It had a state penitentiary return address. Brenda wrote 4 pages trying to guilt trip me. She claimed she did it all for the family. She reminded me she was still my mother. She expected a furious reply. She wanted my anger because anger meant she still mattered. I read the letter standing by my kitchen counter. I dropped it straight into the trash can. I did not reply. The silence was absolute. Today, my house is quiet, filled only with the sounds of my daughter laughing and Leo humming in the kitchen. We spend our weekends with friends who celebrate our wins and support our struggles without keeping a hidden ledger. We have a chosen family now. People who understand that respect is a baseline, not a transaction. If you are listening to this, I need to speak directly to you. You do not survive a toxic family by hoping they will eventually love you. You survive by realizing their love was never the currency you needed in the first place. My mother was not just a thief. She was a narcissist who bought the illusion of success with her own daughter's blood. Kelsey was the golden child because she reflected Brenda's vanity. I was the workhorse because my competence threatened her. I spent my entire youth mistaking being needed for being loved. I made those massive financial sacrifices because it was easier to pay the bill than to accept the agonizing grief of realizing I never really had a mother. I learned 3 rules the hard way, and I want you to write them down. Rule number 1, the myth of the strong one. People do not praise your resilience because they admire your spirit. They praise it because it means they never have to carry their own weight. When you are the strong one, your suffering is treated as an inconvenience, not a crisis. They will watch you drown and complain that you are splashing too much water on their boat. Rule number 2, boundaries without consequences are merely suggestions. You cannot negotiate with entitlement. Explaining your pain to a manipulator only gives them a roadmap to your triggers. True boundaries are silent. They are immediate. They are backed by undeniable action, like a canceled credit card or a served legal notice. Rule number 3, biology is not a debt. You do not owe your life, your credit score, or your child's future to the people who happen to share your DNA. The title of family is maintained through mutual respect, not extracted through guilt and hidden ledgers. Blood might explain where you came from, but loyalty determines who gets to stay in your life. If you are the load-bearing wall in your family, I want you to ask yourself a hard question tonight. If you crumbled tomorrow, would they help you rebuild, or would they just complain about the dust? You are allowed to walk away from people who hurt you. You are allowed to protect your peace. Drop a comment if you have ever had to legally resign from your own family. Share this story with the person in your life who needs permission to stop funding their own abuse. And please subscribe, because peace is incredibly expensive, but freedom is priceless. I am Valerie, and I am finally free.